please welcome to the stage the president of California State University, Monterey Bay, Dr. Eduardo Ochoa.
Good evening. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's program in the President's Speaker Series featuring Luis Valdés. Luis is the founder and artistic director of the internationally renowned El Teatro Campesino, a council member of the National Endowment of the Arts, a founding member of the California Arts Council, and a recipient of the National Medal of Arts. He is the writer and director of the films Zoot Suit and La Bamba, along with a long list of other credits. And we're proud that his personal story is so closely tied to the history of our university. In 1994, Luis was recruited to be a member of CSUMB's founding faculty. Peter Smith, our first president, and Steve Arvizu, our founding provost, asked Luis to create a theater department. Luis had something more expansive in mind. The department was launched with a broader focus as a fusion of theater, film, television, radio, and multimedia. Graduates of the program, which began as the Department of Teledramatic Arts and Technology and has since been rechristened the Cinematic Arts and Technology Department, have achieved great success in a wide range of roles in the entertainment industry. His vision was also instrumental in the repurposing of this building, the World Theater, as both a campus and community resource, providing a forum for outstanding entertainment and thought-provoking speakers. Luis's life story resonates with many of our current students, well over half of whom are the first in their families to attend college. In 1939, he was born into a migrant farm worker's family in Delano, California. After earning his bachelor's degree in English from the San Jose State University, Luis joined labor leader Cesar Chavez as a picket line captain in the Great Delano Grape Strike of 1965. Through El Teatro Campesino, the farm workers' theater, Luis created a brief theatrical sketches called Actos on flatbed trucks, with actors recruited from among the strikers. Their goal was to communicate the need for unionization among farm workers, to energize and inspire them, and to educate the public about the migrant workers' plight. El Teatro Campesino was one of the sparks of the Chicano movement, Luis once said. We were carrying that consciousness into colleges and universities. They were set on fire by our performances. Today, Luis continues to mentor emerging artists, directors, performers, and producers, and to reach out to a new generation of leaders. I am particularly pleased that Luis is a regular speaker to participants in our Migrant Junior Honor program, which brings elementary and middle school students to CSUMB to learn what life is like on a college campus. He told one such group, "You have been blessed with the grace of your ancestors. We have to believe in ourselves. We have to believe that our children are going to create a better America." We at CSUMB are honored to be associated with a man who continues to inspire all of us to build a more just and equitable society. While Luis is speaking, please write any questions you might have on the index cards that have been provided. CSUMB staff members will circulate through the audience to gather those cards for the Q&A session to follow his remarks. But before we turn the podium over to Luis and his remarks, we're going to play a short video about Luis and the Teatro Campesino.
I am the ballad sings, and my voice is of the streets and the cantinas and the dance halls and all the places where I am heard. For I am the soul of the common people that sings of tragedies and melancholy, but also happiness. Ahora, muchachos, ¡Adentro! I am Joaquin. The odds are great, but my spirit is strong. My faith, unbreakable. My blood is pure. I am Aztec Prince and Christian Christ. I shall endure. I will endure.
We are El Teatro Campesino, the farm workers' theater of Delano, of the Great Strike, of the Chicano movement, of the Raza, the farm workers' theater of Aztlán, of the Southwest, of America, of the Earth, the farm workers' theater of the universe.
What's happening? El corrido de Jesús.
¡Pelado!
Rascuachi.
Hey man, you call that dancing? August 8th, 1942.
After you, Padre.
No, my son, after you.
No, please, after
You,
that.
my son.
I can't believe this. I think they're really going to kill us.
Are you afraid to die?
I'd rather live.
Me too.
I can't believe this. Padre, you think you can do me a favor?
What?
Put in a good word for me with the men upstairs.
I'll see what I can do.
It's not happening.
¡Viva Benito Juárez!
¡Viva la libertad!
Where are you going? I'm leaving.
Yo soy el corrido, canto alegrías, tragedias y penas. Yo soy rilera, tengo mi Juan, él es mi vida, yo soy su querer. Cuando me dicen que ya se va el tren, adiós, madrecita.
embarrassed I could spit. Now, do you honestly think that those people killed my firstborn son? All I know is that my brother is dead. And those people are alive and safe and living in America and probably on welfare. But that's okay. That's just hunky-dory. Because they fit right in with the drug addicts and the illegal aliens. ¿Qué te dijo?
What do you think you're doing?
What? We do not take welfare. We pay taxes, too. You want to see my green card, Mr. Citizen? I'll show you my green card. Yeah. Get out of my way. Get out of my way.
Dwight!
You got This used to be Mexico. Illegal alien.
Para bailar la bamba, para bailar la bamba, se necesita una poca de gracia pa' mi patria, Gary Bailarina. That's how much I love him. Like a goddamn dog!
Bob, we don't have to talk about this right now.
No! Shit, no, I want to talk about this right now, and you're gonna listen to me.
This is a crock of shit, man.
No, he set you up, man, to conquer the world, and he didn't leave me shit.
Nobody told you to throw your life away, man. I'm only sorry I didn't say something about you being drunk half the time. You did it to yourself.
Listen to you coming in here like you own the whole goddamn country. To me, you're always gonna be that little asshole who followed me around in the sticks.
Yeah, I followed you around, man. I followed you around because I thought you were somebody. Then,
don't you walk out on me! Oh, shit! Ever talk to me like this?
you want it, huh? I'm that Rosie asshole, huh? You asked for it, man.
I'm gonna kill you!
And so, amigos, el corrido goes on. It shall remember even you and me. Adiós, amigos.
Now, please welcome Luis Valdez.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. My pleasure to be back on campus. The future does literally belong to those that can imagine it, and those of us that gathered here 26 years ago began to imagine a university that is now becoming more and more real as we go day to day. A lot of change has happened in the last 25 years, and it just shouldn't surprise anybody that life is about change. Life is change. It's interesting that what the present is. The present is always a negotiation between the past and the future. And it is a mistake to imagine that the past is no longer here. The past lasts a lot longer than people know. But so does the future. The future arrives a lot earlier than people are aware. The future is already here. It's with us. And those of us that are continuing to engage the world in one way or another are always negotiating between that vision of what was and what will be. It always resolves itself in terms of human beings and who we are as people. We are not wood. We are not meat. We are living, vibrant beings. And if anything has inspired my work as a writer and as a director and as a founder of El Teatro Campesino, it has been the notion that comes from our Mayan ancestors that human beings are vibrant beings, that we vibrate in conjunction with everyone else and the whole universe as a whole. And this vibration is something that has always been here. It is something that precedes us in birth and outlasts us after death. Vibration is the essence of the universe. And those that tap into the arts or the sciences or what have you, or maybe just ordinary life, learn to relate to this vibration that is all around us. I'm not talking about any Pollyanna sense. I'm talking about something that is absolutely real. But let me speak a little bit, because I'm going to walk out from behind this podium. I really don't like the podium too much. I'm too short for podiums anyway, so let me come out. And thanks to the technicians, we're wired. So I'll be able to actually direct a few provocative statements, actually, maybe that will lead to our Q&A a little bit later. But we gathered to create this university out of what was Fort Ord 25 years ago, and we were asked basically to dream. And so there were 13 founding professors, and we were all dreamers in our own fields, dreaming of what was possible on this abandoned military base. And I was here actually back in the early 60s as I was in ROTC at San Jose State. We came here for a couple of training sessions to fire M1s and such. I also protested at the gates actually against the Vietnam War out here by Highway 1. But the fact is that it was a pleasure to be able to come and turn swords into plowshares, to dream in terms of this area. And it seemed to me a tremendous opportunity to be able to tap into not just the future, but also the past of California. Look around you. We are here in the mouth of Monterey Bay. You know, when we created this building, it was a 900-seat cinder block movie house for the sailors, basically, for the soldiers, basically, on base. And so they showed regular Hollywood movies, old Hollywood movies, and the screen was way back there somewhere. 900 seats, all flat. But we turned this into the World Theater back in 1995, knowing more or less what the future had in store for us. As a filmmaker, I was aware that soon we were going to begin streaming movies. That's what we do every day now in our homes with Netflix and others. But we anticipated that maybe movie theaters were going to start streaming. So this is a movie theater that can stream. But more than just the actual plant itself, we were dreaming about the area. And to speak about the past a little bit, if there's anything more magical on planet Earth than the Salinas Valley, I don't know what it is. We have Monterey Bay, which is incredible. You know, for 300 years, the Spanish galleons, started in 1571, sailed from Manila all the way to Acapulco, back and forth. And unfortunately, the Spanish were not with it. And so they weren't able to conceive of a midway point, which could have been Monterey Bay. They discovered it too late. But consider what this natural harbor would have been in terms of human history had they taken advantage. But, you know, they got on the Gulf Stream and they figured, let's just keep going all the way down to Acapulco. So for 300 years, there was this trade that was happening. They called it China trade, but basically they were coming from the Philippine Islands and bringing the first Filipinos to California. As a matter of fact, there was a shipwreck further up the coast, and the first Filipinos in the state got off the ship and made themselves at home in California. This is 1587. But in any case, a lot of people were coming and going. It was a China trade that was international, it was global trade. But they never really tapped into the wonder of this part of the country. Now, the Spanish were wise enough to know that California had to have a center point, and so they chose Monterey Bay, and they chose Monterrey, which is the king's forest. You know, the Monterrey was here. And the fact is, though, that there was a lot of potential here. It was beautiful. But it was never really developed. And what we have today is basically a pristine section of California, all the way from, probably Prunedale, maybe San Juan Bautista, all the way down to Paso Robles. And that is virtually open. I mean, there are vineyards, there's rolling, beautiful, incomparably beautiful landscape that is pristine California, but it's open, it's empty, except for the farms and the farm workers. Now, what does it take to be a farm worker? Well, it takes whatever it forces anybody to become a wage slave. It's not easy to work in the fields. It is taxing on the human body and on the human mind. So when we started at Teatro Campesino 54 years ago in Delano, one of our missions was to expose the human brutality of wage slavery in the fields and to expose also the creative abilities of farm workers. And the way to do this directly for us was to set up a theater of, by, and for farm workers. And I went and pitched this idea to Cesar Chavez right at the beginning of the Delano grape strike, and he embraced it, Dolores embraced it, and we became El Teatro Campesino. And we're still there. We're based in San Juan Bautista. But the idea then of bringing the tools of the arts to people has caught on. It caught on right away with the college students. There were many Chicano theaters. But I'm very happy and proud to see that a whole new generation of playwrights and directors and filmmakers have emerged, and now you're beginning to see their work and all of the delivery systems that we have on our phones, on our laptops, on our television screens, whatever. It's coming into fruition. But it comes from the idea that the arts themselves have something to do with our human potential. They have something to do with exposing what all of us can do. And that's something that connects the past as well as the future. I have read diaries that have to do with the De Anza expedition that came, and as they came and landed in Monterey, they were describing the beauty of the landscape. I found this diary in a bookstore in Mexico City. It amazed me that here are the actual testimonies of people that came when the landscape was devoid of any Europeans, nothing but Native Americans. And to go back to those Native Americans, you have to consider that why this is called the World Theater. This is called the World Theater because right behind here, the building, there's an area that was going to be developed as our performing arts center for the university. But the Native Americans, the Mitsun, the Ohlone, the Native Americans that were here for 10,000 years had already discovered it long ago. So they had an area over here that was a dancing area, which they called in their own language, dancing at the edge of the world. And we wanted to call this new building that we were creating here, Dancing at the Edge of the World. That's too long, though. So we called it the World Theater. But you get the idea that dance, the earliest peoples on this part of the world, on this continent, were into the arts because that was a very basic human expression. You can dance your way to the truth as much as you can write or study or investigate. Dancing was the first way that people reaffirmed themselves. And so that is connected to the theater, that is connected to the idea of transferring the tools of the arts to people. So what we have here in pristine California, in this great Salinas Valley, a lot of farm workers. A lot of farm workers who've been brought in as wage slaves, driven by their personal necessities in order to survive with their families. And they're hired to do menial labor, basically, bend over, stoop labor, work. If you have ever tried it, if you've ever been there, you know what I'm talking about. It can be brutalizing, particularly if there's no hope. But the idea is that this university was created as a beacon of hope for the whole of the Salinas Valley, for this whole area of pristine California and all of the people that live here. So the past has delivered unto us this Garden of Eden. That's what Steinbeck called it. This Garden of Eden has been given to us and to our descendants to do as we will, as our imaginations can foretell. And the thing is, though, that it is being used for agriculture still. The Salinas Valley was conditioned by the river, the Salinas River that came in from Monterey Bay. Salinas means salty, because the salt water of the bay seeped into the land, and so the ground was very, very salty. But it was the Chinese immigrants who came in, and they say there's one way that you can get the salt out of the ground. That's with sasol trees. So Sasol Avenue in Salinas came from the Chinese solution to leaching out the salt from the landscape. But in any case, what we have here is an area that remains relatively pristine. So I see the future. I see the future in terms of what happens, what may happen, both for good and for bad. Bad is that we will have Strip City, all the way from Prunedale all the way down to Paso Robles. that this landscape will eventually be raped and abused, and that will have really a violation of its pristine natural beauty. On the other hand, if we have enough people that have developed the wisdom to be able to preserve the environment and the open space, we may be seeing the possibility of a hopeful, beautiful, powerful, creative California. The destiny of California has been written in the past. It's been written by that global China trade that brought the first peoples here. It's been written for the previous 10,000 years by the Native Americans that were here. Shell mounds all over the Bay Area indicating there were 100,000 people in California. It was not empty. It was smallpox and European diseases that eventually wiped people out, and of course just brutal oppression. But their descendants are still here. That past still exists. The Indians did not disappear. They integrated. And so it's with every wave of human activity that has come to these shores, there has been a contribution that's continued to build, that's continued to mount. And that is just the past meeting the present, meeting the future. What we have today in our schools are the children that are the living future. And they're more diverse than America has ever witnessed in any of our lifetimes, in any previous lifetimes. We have people from all over the world. Now, what are all these young kids going to grow up to, and what kind of world are they going to be visited upon them? A world of pandemics, perhaps. We're watching that happen as we speak. But perhaps a world that will fully integrate everybody and tap into the potential of everybody's dance, into the potential of everybody's artistic power. And this area still has that. We have the two bookends in California, Southern California, which is impacted by tremendous populations, the Bay Area, populated by tremendous populations, and we're seeing the results of that kind of urbanity, both the good and the bad. But here, we have potential. Here, we have open space. And let us hope that we can do something with it. In terms of farm labor, I think it is essential that the farm workers and their families and their kids realize that the future is a lot shorter than they imagine. What we've got upon us is robotics. What we've got upon us is the ability of science now to develop machines that can pick stuff. I remember this as a kid. I was a cotton picker. I was a cotton picker in the 40s and in the 50s, and in 1952, 53, I saw the mechanical cotton picker come in and just wipe out the workforce. And while I was working with Cesar Even, we saw machines that were being developed that could pick grapes. There are machines already being built, probably out of Davis, UC Davis in California, that are going to be working in those fields. And what that is going to require inevitably is a college education and a degree in order to run some of these machines that will be actually working out in these fields. So it isn't a matter of just being blind to what's happening in the future. We have to think in terms of the consequences. You know, every generation is like a tree ring in the tree of life. We all have our cohorts. Now, I've been around for a while now. I know I'm not a teenager. I can remember the 40s. I can remember what California was like. You know, in 1940, when I was born, the population of California was 6 million people. There were 750,000 Hispanics. There were 120,000 Japanese Americans, another 100,000 Chinese, less than 100,000 African Americans. The state itself was basically WASP, white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant. I remember it. I lived it. We were migrant farm workers, which meant that we went up and down the state, all the way from the San Fernando Valley, where we used to pick oranges, and all the way up to Santa Rosa and to San Jose and the whole coastal region. We were migrant farm workers. We saw how beautiful and pristine and empty it was. It's no longer empty. We are now pushing rapidly toward 50 million people within 20 years. We're almost there. And the majority of those are people that are not white, people that are not necessarily of European, or at least direct European descendancy. So that future is already upon us. That future is already in our schools. And when we invited migrant farm worker kids to come campus, we at Teatro Campesino, to help them in our summer programs, we saw that future written clearly in their faces. We saw the hope, we saw the excitement that they had coming to the campus and participating in the arts for a summer, just to see what they could do. You know, it's a wonderful thing to see a young person's face light up when they discover that they can do something. And really, the wonderful thing about the arts is that anybody can do it. You know, you don't need a college education to sing. You don't need a degree in order to be able to act. We all act in life. That was one of the working premises of El Teatro Campesino. No, regardless of what you can do, where you've been, you can act, you can be part of this. But of course, you need to take that further. You need to go into the sciences, you need to go into medicine, you need to become the rocket scientist. You need to do all of that. But you do it by discovering your potential to begin with. And that is what a university is for, and that's what the arts are about. A lot of talk about science, technology, and engineering and mathematics. I used to be a math major at San Jose State. I was a straight A math major. I only mention that because I don't look like a straight A math major. At least people look at me and they would assume, I've been asked to my face, can you read? That's because people are reading the past. They can't read the present or the future, but it's here. This looks more like the future than people realize. And the fact is that I'm an artist. I embrace that. I also embrace the sciences. I think that science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are essential to our future. But none of them will advance without the arts. We don't need STEM, we need steam. We need the power of steam power. You know, I've worked in the movies, you know, I've done digital editing, all of that. None of that excludes the necessity of the arts. You have to have the arts in order to be able to understand what all of this technology is all about. You have to have the power of the imagination, the power of creativity that comes from the arts in order to be able to shape the future, even with huge machines or intricate technology, electronics, what have you. And so this is a university that has its destiny and its future cut out for it. Not only are we dealing with the promise of pristine California, we have a treasure that's been handed to us. A treasure, which is the Salinas Valley, which is old, classic, rolling hills, California. It looks like Italy out there. It's wonderful, it's beautiful. But it's also in need of people with right thinking and inspiration and force and power and belief in themselves. You start by discovering that you can sing, you discover that you can dance, and you take that as you go and as you grow, and as you go and you share it with others, you take that to higher and higher and higher levels. The future belongs to those that can imagine. It's the power of the imagination. Imaging, being able to see. When we started this university, we talked about the need to think outside the box. The digital technology required nonlinear thinking. We were stuck with the old analog, one thing comes after the other thinking, and we suddenly needed to begin to think on parallel tracks, multiple tracks, because that's what the technology was demanding of us. It was already happening. Cesar Chavez thought outside the box. He did not go straight on into a typical labor union. He created a movement. He created something out of the power of his own suffering and his own ideas in order to facilitate the empowering of the poorest of the poor, who are the farm workers. He thought outside the box. That's why El Teatro Campesino exists. If he had been a straight union guy, he might not have supported the idea of a farm workers theater. But he had the farm workers theater, he had a newspaper, he had a clinic, he had schools for kids. Well, the union had, you know, not just Caesar, the union and Dolores and all the rest of them. It was thinking outside the box. And so this university needs to think outside the box. It cannot be just one more CSU. And we, as the state of California, we, as citizens of this world right now, need to continually think outside the box. Trump is not here forever. Trump is fat. Trump is mortal. Trump is already gone, you understand? He's already gone. And the future is already upon him. The future is already coming headlong. He's going to run straight into that wall. You know, he's a boomer. He's younger than me. And I know my contemporaries. I remember the times when we were have our high hopes and we were teenagers and we were dancing to rock and roll and seeing Elvis come in and then the Beatles and so forth. You know, all of that high. It was a high, literally a high, you know, for everybody. You know, we're on LSD. We're doing the whole shot, you know. At the same time, though, we should have realized that there were those that were holding back. They were going in the opposite direction. Those that were only thinking of their own greed and of their own short-winded sightedness. And so I'm a little embarrassed, actually, that my generation, let's call them, I'm pre-boomer, but let's get my boomer generation, has turned out to be such half a disappointment. Half inspirational, half moving, half changing the world, and the other half resisting, wanting to hold on to the greed, wanting to hold on to just the self-service. So we will eventually be phased out. I can accept that. That's natural. The tree ring grows and is followed by another tree ring and another. These are the generations of humankind. And so my hope is that we will get past it. We'll get past the epidemic. We'll get past this contagion in the White House. And I was happy to be there with Barack Obama. For the first time in my life, I felt that that White House belonged to me. We're going to have to fumigate it, you know, after, you know, the present occupant, you know, and paint it, you know, put deodorizers all over the place, you know. But the fact is that that will change too. And so we need to invest in our youth. We need to invest in our 5 and 4-year-olds and give them the hope. And this is what the Teatro Campesino has been doing for 54 years. You know, we start with our kids real young, 4 or 5. As soon as they learn they can act, they're on, you know. As soon as they know they're on their feet, they discover, oh, I'm somebody. And that's the key. That's what keeps them going. The future belongs to those that can imagine it, but it is a future that is born out of inspiration. It is a future that is born out of hope. It is a future that's born out of belief in something, not only in yourself, but in something greater than yourself. We all need to believe in something greater than ourselves in order to achieve great things. I'll repeat that. We all need to believe in something greater than ourselves in order to achieve great things. As Cesar Chavez said, we must live in service to our brothers and sisters on earth. That is the meaning of life. And one of the finest ways to serve is by educating people. To teach is to learn. It's a constant. To teach is to learn. And you never stop learning. You never stop learning. Hopefully you get to the point when you know it's time to get out of the way and let the new generation come through. That happens too. That's very natural. Without disparaging our elderly population, they shouldn't be completely discarded, but tap into their wisdom at the same time that we're encouraging the wisdom of the youngest. It's a full circle. It's the circle of life. It is the circle of the tree ring. It is the circle that unites us all. And so with that, I'll stop so we can have a Q&A. Thank you very much. All right. And I believe Dr. Ochoa is going to join me. Here he is. All right.
Thank you, Luis, for your inspiring remarks.
Okay, here we go.
So while we gather the audience questions, we're going to start with a few that we prepared ahead of time. And this is a little bit about the performing arts industry. The recent Academy Awards program was again marked by controversy about the lack of diversity among the nominees. Why does inclusion remain such a big problem in Hollywood?
Okay, well, it is a big problem, and a lot more could be done. But Hollywood is an institution, you know. It's like an aircraft carrier. It's got thousands and thousands of people involved on all the different levels. The biggest frustration for me is that the people that they bring in to operate the aircraft carrier, you know, from the deck, from the captain's deck, are people that usually come in with very limited knowledge of what the West Coast is all about. the half-life of an executive in Hollywood is about 2 years, and they're concerned about their own jobs, and they're concerned about the bottom line. And so they consider, this is changing very rapidly, but they consider anything that is not white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, the accepted norm, a dangerous undertaking, so they don't hire a lot of minority. They didn't used to hire women, but they don't hire very many minority directors, although that is also changing. The caveat for me is that things are changing so quickly on certain levels in the entertainment business that it's hard to just talk about the past. You need to talk about the potential for the future. There are a lot of new people of color, African American. The whole African American film movement has created tremendous works and writers and directors that you couldn't have even conceived of, 25 years ago. Latinos are on their way. After a long period of stalemating, it seems to be breaking. And it is a question of people beginning to see the handwriting on the wall. All of these execs, that work for all these major studios need to realize that the people going to the movie houses are actually people of color, if you look at the statistics. That will change too, because everybody's watching the movies at home. So there's reason to believe and to be hopeful about the future. It's going to take people that are hard-headed and willing to put up with the struggle that's necessary in order to create the changes. I had to bang a few doors myself, kick a few doors in order to get things done in Hollywood. But that was a while ago. It's still hard, but not impossible. Okay?
Thank you. This is an interesting question. How is social media affecting the creative mindset, for good or ill?
Well, social media, unfortunately, has turned into a big sewer pipe, It's supposed to be it's really interesting how every discovery that human beings have made or invention of one form or another, the guy that that created his name was DuPont, I think it was Brazilian. He created the airplane, the single wing airplane. It was in Paris, it was in France. This was at the turn of the century, and he figured he had found a way to resolve all of the problems of the world. Everybody would have their own airplane and fly to work or fly out to the country, and he used to fly his own airplane. His plane looked like planes do today, like the little planes look. And so he went home eventually very discouraged just before World War I, because he saw what his invention had become. It became a fighter airplane. It became an instrument of war and destruction. And so time and again in human history, things are created that seem to be beneficial for whatever they're worth. Heroin was a heroin, it was a lifesaver at one point, but it became heroin horse, In the same way, social media, even within living memory, 25 years ago, seemed like the hope of the world. I taught a class here online. I forget exactly what the building is now, but it was amazing because we were online. Every student had a laptop computer, and we were going directly into the internet in order to extract material as we were lecturing. And I had an operator on the side. It seemed to me the 21st century has arrived. We're here. But 25 years ago, we had not yet discovered the sluice pipe of garbage that social media has become. Now, anybody has access, but with that access, we get everything. We get everything. People's insecurities, their egomania, their lies and distortions, and it's something that we're going to have to deal with. We can't go back. We can't say we don't want the internet. We don't want social media. We want social media, but we're going to have to learn, as previous generations have done, how to coordinate it. We did it with the automobile. I don't know how we'll do it with social media, but it needs a consensus that we're only going to go so far and not beyond. I don't know how to do that yet. Maybe that's for the future generation to figure out.
We might need to issue driver's licenses before you operate the internet.
I think there should be license before you run for president, Yeah. You say, are you sane? You know, are you sane? Then we can let you run, you know, because to have an idiot, you know, you can take, and that's like taking them, everybody's democracy, everybody's, no, not everybody's equal in that sense, you know, not everybody's suited to the task, and there ought to be more stringent controls. A lot of what is happening now in the White House is because those have been norms, and it's easy to break norms and not laws. And not to tie any leader down, but I think that there are abuses that we're seeing now that no one anticipated. And so now that they have been abused, we have to do something in order to correct that. Again, we is a poetic we. It's future generations are going to have to deal with that. And I don't know why we haven't had a woman president yet. I really think it is a problem that we have not been able to accept the equality, the wisdom, the point of view of women in the field, in life, at home. We do it at home, we do it in our lives. Why we can't do that in our power centers is a backward thing. And that needs to be corrected.
So in this kind of world that's changing quickly, what do you think or imagine the role of theater will be in that future?
Theater?
Theater.
Well, theater is always with us, you know. Theater is not something that that only occurs in the little box. Theater has become a way of life. Talk about social media. Everybody's on television now. I used to say that 25 years ago. I used to say, you know, everybody's going to be on television. And of course, the iPhone has taken care of that. We're all on the air, and we're all performers. And because of that kind of scrutiny, because of that visual aspect of our lives now, I think it will change the way that people look. It will change the way that people dress. It will even change the way that people speak, because we're all on public display. And this display also needs to find its own balance, you know, from the egomania to something that it's a little more acceptable, you know, more what's the word? It's more helpful to everybody. You know, there were people that used to hate theater way back in the old days when it was all analog, when it was all done by hand, when it was all one-to-one. People saw plays. You had to go to the theater to see a play, you know. But there were people that were shocked then, but they wouldn't go into the theater, you know. Or maybe they'd go to the back door and date the actresses, you know. or hate there's a story of a famous actor who worked as a villain. He was a famous villain. He came to a theater in San Francisco, and after the show, he had to run for his life because the audience was trying to kill him, right? I mean, that kind of one-to-one amuses us now, but it's the question of doing theater has always been a little bit scandalous. But now, the scandal is in everybody's hands. It's in your social media. It's in your home. You invite it. You turn on the television set, and there it is. So it really requires a different set of filters for us to be able to see the truth, or to be able to leach out the negativity that's coming toward us, you know. My mother was a spiritual counselor, and she says you always have to protect the base of your neck, because what happens is that you can meet somebody that's really negative and angry, and that negativity will come in. I'm just talking about vibration, right? Human beings are vibrant beings, and we used to have this improv in the teatro where we would switch personalities. Someone would come in happy, someone would come in angry, and they would cross the stage, and as they crisscrossed, the happy guy would become angry and the angry guy would become happy, you know. That happens in life. You can be walking down the street. You can be in a public space like this, and one guy who's got a chip on his shoulder and a bug up his you-know-what can make everybody angry. Everybody can start screaming and yelling because anger is communicable. Anger is like a communicable disease, right? Rage, that's so easy. On the other hand, sometimes hope. Sometimes that kind of strength and courage that an individual can express can also infect an audience. We need to be aware how we're all vibrant beings exchanging energies all of the time. We're doing it now through social media and it becomes obvious, but we've been doing it since the history of the human race began. We have been vibrating in each other's realms, and we need to respect that as vibrant beings, what is possible and what we do to each other.
So, turning to your work, as you look back on it, is there a common thread that unites all of your work?
That unites all of the work? Empowerment, I think. It's been, the idea was, for us, I wanted to do a theater that didn't drain the audience, that didn't bring the audience down. I had to, because we were doing Teatro Campesino, we had to have a theater that brought people up. Now, you cannot inspire people by lying to them. It's a vibration. And the vibration is either true or it's not. And if it's not true, you're not going to inspire anybody. But the idea that this vibration exists, and that through that, we can achieve all kinds of changes that are for the betterment of everybody. And I think that aspect of it is very much a part of what I do and why I'm in the theater. Theater is a social medium. Theater is a question of communion, that you bring people together. And I don't believe that actors should only get up to display themselves, because that's just egomania. Why get up here and attract attention to yourself? Who needs it? What we need is to be able to exchange energies as we go. And so whoever gets up to act should also, in its own way, inspire by sharing vibrations. And you get vibration back from the audience. So in that sense, that aspect of our work, of El Teatro Campesino, has been inspired by what we call the vibrant being. This is the aesthetic of the vibrant being. We explain it through Mayan mythology, because the term vibrant being comes from a Mayan term, Huinictli, which means vibrating root of the universe, means that all of us are vibrating roots of the universe. And so vibration has been an absolute essence of the work of El Teatro Campesino and my work as a playwright. When I set words down on, well, it's not paper anymore, it's on the screen, but when I write stuff, it's really a guideline so that what happens on stage, and sometimes you can only discover it on stage, really becomes it's vibrant. And everything, whether it's ideas, or whether it's feelings, or whether it's physical movement, is subject to these natural universal laws of vibration. We have the Vibrant Being Workshop, which breaks this down in terms of Mayan philosophy. There are 20 steps, 5 steps for each of the 4 columns. And the first one is about the body, the second was the heart, the third is the mind, the fourth is what they call the spirit. It's really where you believe in something greater than yourself. But they all vibrate. The body vibrates. Any athlete knows that. Anybody that dances knows that. If you learn how to vibrate with your body, you're healthy, you're going for it. The heart vibrates. And so as a playwright, as a director, as an artist, I realized that you have to engage the heart. And the heart then becomes the access point for telling your story. And the mental vibration has to do with being sophisticated, being able to see the negatives and positives, not letting it stop you, but being able to go back and forth, being sophisticated. It used to be called sophistry, but being able to go back and forth and argue 2 sides of the same questions. That's the agility of the mind. That's how the mind vibrates. And you have two sides of your brain, you know, and there's a synapse that keeps going back and forth. I encourage people to become bilingual because bilingualism encourages that. The synapses of the brain are real quick so that you can think half a sentence in English y la otra parte en español, you know. In other words, you can go back and forth real quick. Well, that keeps your mind healthy. And then eventually, the spirit. The spirit is really totally a question of service. Do something for others, not just for yourself. If you must give yourself for others. I mean, it's as simple as that. And so, in my work, it's really, I hope, a legacy that I can leave to younger generations, right? The actos are really for kids. They're little things that were developed way back when for farm workers who couldn't even read and write. But some of those actos have survived because they're true. They have something, and they're simple to do. Los Vendidos, which is probably my most produced acto, is something that kids can do, have done. They don't have to be Chicanos, but they can actually, it doesn't matter. I saw this done by black kids in Little Rock, Arkansas, in Central High School, you know, where well, back in the 50s when Eisenhower sent the Marines, you know, the Army to bring the black students there. My wife and I, Lupe and I, went there to Little Rock and met some of the original students. They were there. And then they presented Los Vendidos. these were black students that were between los vendidos, you know? And it amazed me that in that place, in that context, this acto was making sense. And I'm glad that the actos exist because it shows you it doesn't have to be really complicated. It doesn't have to be real witty. It can just be very simple and very direct, but that's the beauty of it, okay? And then, of course, there's other more developed, more philosophical pieces. And I hope to publish my Vibrant Being workbook sometime later this year. And if you want complexity, try that one, you know, later.
Well, this one sort of follows up a little bit on some of the things you were talking about just now. If you were to choose your next story based on the current situation we're in, what story would satisfy your criteria and why?
Now? Oh my God. Well, I'm working on a play. You know, I can't talk too much about it, but it's a joke in Hollywood that when you set out to make a movie, you don't know if you're going to survive. You know, unless you've been in the movie business, you don't know what I'm saying. But it's a life and death undertaking. You know, that you start out, and it's a little bit like war. You're not shooting bullets, you're shooting film, but you're working against the elements. You're working on a budget. You're working. You know, you don't know if you're going to survive or not. Well, to me, I mean, just writing a play is that. I commit myself to an idea. I commit myself to certain thoughts and certain feelings. And I don't know what the outcome will be eventually, you know, but it has to do with understanding ourselves better. This happens to be about the Filipino farm workers that started the Delano grape strike. And I don't think there's been enough acknowledgement of Larry Itliong and Philip Veracruz and Andy Imutan, his wife Luming. I mean, there were so many of the leaders that were there. They were part of the same story. And I'd love to be able to, you know, well, I'm telling that story, but I mean, I'd love to be able to have people understand that, you know, someone's gain is not your loss. We all gain. And it was that Valley of the Heart. You know, I sympathize with Japanese Americans. I've grown up with Japanese Americans. When you live and grow up in California, you're exposed to everybody, you know? And obviously I was exposed to Anglos. These exotic types, you know, when I was a kid, you know, I used to go to cakewalks in grammar school. Cakewalks, que extraño, mano, you know? But the fact is that obviously that was the first challenge. Can I assimilate? Can I learn English? Can I do this? Can I make them my friends? And yes, it turned out, yeah, you know what? We can do that. So you incorporate these people. So I became Anglo, you know? I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not a coconut, you know? I'm a Chicano, you know? And so I absorbed European culture and white, and, you know, I could have assimilated and disappeared, you know? But I didn't want to do that. I figured that I needed to take this knowledge that I felt accepted and pass it on. And so we collectively started the Chicano movement, you know, to build up some pride in our community, some power, some empowerment. But it didn't stop there, you know. We did that because we were inspired by the African American movement in our country. We were inspired by the Native American movement. You know, we were inspired by everybody, really, when you finally get down to it. I had no models, you know. When I started out, there was no such thing as Latino theater. There was barely existed in Latin America. How could it exist in the United States? So my models, believe it or not, I was very inspired by the Irish cultural and political movement at the turn of the century in Ireland. I was very inspired by John Milton Synge, the playwright, and also William Butler Yeats, and how they handled Irish mythology. And I said, you know, I can do that. I can do this. And I was very inspired by the 1920s in Mexico, Jose Vasconcelos, Raza Cósmica, and then the muralist movements, Diego Rivera and Alfaro Siqueiros, and José Clemente Orozco. And in 1972, El Teatro Campesino was performing Casa del Lago in Mexico City, and we were outdoors putting on actos, and I looked out in this crowd of 1,000 people, and I saw a familiar face in the stands, and I said, could that be him? Maybe it isn't. I was performing, you know. But anyway, after the show, he came down, and it was Siqueiros. He came down and shook my hand and said, "Usted es un maestro." And I said, "No, maestro, usted es el maestro," you know. But the fact is, I think I know how he meant it. He meant it in the Mexican sense that as soon as you get a little bit of knowledge, you should share it. You become a maestro. And so I can't think of a better service, talk about the university, talk about the arts, than being a maestro. That is our duty. That is our privilege, to pass on what we know. What else are you going to do with it? What else are you going to do with it? Pass it on, you know? Someone might like it, you know? Don't bogart your knowledge, you know what I'm saying? Pass the sucker on, you know? And let other people enjoy it, okay?
Okay, you set yourself up for this next question.
Okay.
Do you see yourself teaching at Monterey Bay again? At CSUMB?
You know, well, this is teaching also in that sense, but yeah, I'm very happy that Monterey Bay has been such a success story, that it's here, that it's growing, and as I say, its promise for the area has become even more apparent, I think, as we go. It won't always stay the same. We're always not going to do our agriculture by bringing in the impoverished, you know, the people that are helpless. It'll change. And as a matter of fact, it could be maybe some of the farm workers that grow up as kids here and come to CSUMB and get an education that will become the engineers that design the farm working equipment. Who else could do it better? The people that work there, that put their hands on. All it takes is a farm worker to go, you know, I can do this. I can develop a machine. That's happening now. If you see it on social media, that's one of the high points, is that you can see people are using their knowledge and their expertise and creating new stuff. And so the solution, you know, farming is going to change. I believe we're going to see farms in the major cities. They already have multi-level farms, you know, being developed, and it's something called aeroponic farming. I don't know if you know what that is. Hydroponic is just, you know, dripping water. Aeroponic is air. They don't even have water. They don't even have earth. But they're growing all kinds of pristine vegetables. And I think that the future will require that instead of hopping in a car and going down to your local grocery store where the vegetables have been trucked in from Salinas, you're going to find vegetables that have been grown right around the block, and they're right there for you to pick. But it's going to take imagination, somebody to know that they can do this, that you can eat fresh. And that will change then the need of what's going to happen out here. What do you do with all the wage slaves? They can become contributors. For me, it's the full circle. That we started out to create a Teatro Campesino in order not only to expose the brutality that is farm labor, but also this tremendous waste of human minds and human ingenuity and human intelligence. And it's, you know, these are mathematicians, these are doctors, these are brain surgeons, these are scientists out there, just like everybody else. And anywhere, regardless of color, regardless of point of origin. We're all on planet Earth, and every point in planet Earth is sacred. We need to share that thought. We need to share the fact that none of us are absolutely privileged, that we're here to serve each other and help each other achieve our best promise.
Thank you. So, we're giving some airtime now to questions from students.
Okay.
And so, here's one. As a freshman here at CSUMB, I aspire to become a director myself. What can I do now to not only get started with some sort of experience with film, but also to be prepared to be in the position you're in?
I'm not exactly sure what the position is that I'm in. I'm sitting here. Well, you know, there's someone else thought of this, but I'll just repeat it, that in order to be a movie director, a director of any kind, you have to be really open to the possibilities. To a botanist, there's no such thing as a weed. You're a botanist. To a chemist, there's no such thing as a poison. They're just chemicals. So to a director, there's no such thing as anything that you're not interested in. You should be interested in everything, and from every perspective. You don't separate the arts from the sciences, for instance. You know, they combine, they connect. And you need to see the connection in as many things as possible, that things are interrelated. And you know, we're coming here from San Juan this afternoon. I mean, the whole 101 was backed up, you know. I wish I had another 50 years, you know, because I'd drive some attention to those highways and what we're doing. is we're clogging our own veins, our own arteries, and that can only create a systemic heart attack. You think about it. And so somebody has to address that issue. But it takes someone with imagination and also a practical understanding of how things work, how forces flow into each other, and also the algorithms, that deal with human traffic. All of that is possible if you put your mind to it. If you're going to be a movie director, be prepared for everything. Okay, be prepared to walk down the middle of streets. Watch out you don't get run over. But you walk down looking at the world and saying, all right, what can I do here? I was very grateful that my first movie was actually Zoot Suit. You saw some clips with Eddie Olmos. That was basically the play. I was trying to get this done in Hollywood. When we were in New York, that week before we opened on Broadway, and a Hollywood producer offered me $500,000 for the rights immediately. And $500,000 is a lot, for an ex-farm worker. And this was in 1979, and so it was even more then. But I said, well, what about the screenplay? And he says, well, we'll let you have one chance at the draft. And what about the direction? Oh, well, no, that's out of the question. You can't direct. You're not a director. So I said, you know what? I'm not interested. Take your $500,000 and I'll go on my own. And so I came back to Hollywood, and it was really difficult to get it done. I had a treatment all set up before Batman. Before Batman came out, that's how I saw the Pachuco, the Eddie Olmos character. Up on tops of buildings, he could fly through the air, It was going to be the first Chicano superhero. That's the way I saw the Pachuco. But they said $20 million, impossible, you can't do it. Finally, Ned Tannen, who was president of Universal Studios, gets in touch with me and says, I'm interested, come talk to me. And so I went to talk to him, and he says, well, I think you should just film the play, is what he said. And I said, film the play? Yeah, he says, put it on videotape and we'll transfer it to film. And then he showed me the Gong Show movie, which was a piece of fertilizer, and so I said, no, I don't think so. Anyway, we talked. Eventually, we brought Davey Myers, my cinematographer. He was George Lucas's first cinematographer, aboard, and so he shamed them into giving us Panasonic cameras. And eventually, $1 million budget, that was it. 13 days to shoot it, baptism by fire. And so we shot it, we shot Zoot Suit on the stage. And we had one shot outside of the theater. That was on a crane, a Chapman crane, which is the one that's on a lever above the street. And we just shot a car coming into the theater there, the Aquarius Theater in Hollywood. And that was my one outdoor director experience. Other than that, we were inside the theater. And I was very grateful because by being in the theater, there were limits set on what I could do. If they'd put me out in the wilderness, outside, I would have been kind of freaked. That came later. We did La Bamba on location and all of that. But you have to learn. You have to learn step by step. So for the director, the student director, I'd say, take it easy. Be humble, start small, and let those seeds grow into big, big, big flowers.
Good. So I heard you once say there's power in zero. What did you mean?
The what?
There's power in zero.
There's power in zero. Well, absolutely. Zero is, again, Mayan concept. I'm talking about the Mayan zero, which is a three-dimensional zero. It's like a sphere. We call what we do in the theater the sphere, because it refers to who we are as human beings physically. We're spheres. And every form of dance, doesn't matter what it is really tracing the outlines of this sphere that all of us carry. This is your private space. The moment that you walk in you're in private space, okay? You're into somebody's private space. And so we learn to interact, but acting then is also a question of learning not only the sphere of your body, but the sphere of your emotions and the sphere of your mind, That is the zero. And zero means also Well, you take a 1 and you put a 0 next to it, that's a 10. You put another 0, it's 100, 1,000, and so forth, 100,000, 100 million. 0 is the power to ascend. It is the power to increase. It is a multiplication. It also goes in the opposite direction. You go into -0. You go into 0, 1 is 1 100, 2 zeros, 1 1,000, so forth. You keep going. And so it is the power, to get greater, to increase. The Mayans understood this, the power of 0. This was 0 to them. This is 0. This is the symbol, literally. If you look at the paintings and the statuary and stuff, you're going to find that these symbols. Someone even asked me recently why in yoga they do this. And as it happened, she didn't know what this was. And I said, well, I don't know. I might be the lotus. I don't know what it is in terms of yoga, but I understand in terms of the Mayans. For Mayans, this meant the sun power. This meant 0 power. It meant ascend into the sun. And this comes from the mathematical, the abacus that you have in your hands, It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is 9. 9 is just before you go to 10. So you go up to 0. And so it's a power of increase, And so 0, you go from negative to positive by going through 0. And 0 is kind of like, it's a point where you're feeling humble. It's a point where you're sometimes feeling powerless. It is a point where you're a little bedazzled and befuddled at one point, but you're existing in this vacuum. It can go positive or it can go negative. But it is a stage of mind and a stage of being, they sometimes call it depression, that leads to another state, an exalted state, or even deeper depression. But the thing is that the power of 0 is part of your power of being. And the Mayans understood this in every way. They understood it physically. That's why the ball game was literally an actualization of the ball. They had a rubber ball. No one else had rubber in those days. And the Mayans were able to do the vibration. On the 400 cities of stone, each of them had a ball court at the center. And they're just beginning to restore the ball court in Mexico City. La cancha, de la pelota, they called it, the ball court. But beyond that, they also understood it emotionally. They understood it intellectually. And finally, they understood it in terms of service to the tribe, service to the community. And the power of 0 is the power to overcome nothingness. It is the power, it is the moment between life and death, between birth to death or death to life. Nothing ever dies. It only transforms. And so our lives, that moment of death is really your moment of 0. And for them, for the Maya, the power of 0 had to do with the power to be born and the power to die. And they're both the same thing. When you die, you're born. When you're born, you die. It's a big, deep one, for people to absorb. But it's there. But it's more, you don't have to wait until you're dead. Just do it in your daily life, And it is important to breathe. And it's like I was saying about the past and the future. The past is always with us because some people are still living in the 15th century, and they're around us. And there are some people that are already in the 23rd century, and they're around us. There's no fixed law. But in order to get from one place to the other, you have to go to 0. You have to go to the present moment, right now. You have to go to right now. Where are you now? Breathe. That's where you are. Okay.
Well, I think we could go on. There are a lot of questions, but I think this is the time to pull this one out, which pretty much sums it up. And it says, amazing. Thank you for coming.
Whoa, thank you. All right. And believe. The Mayan word for work is believe, to create, to do with love and pain. Believe, creer. Creer es criar. If you create something, it's because you believe something. If you believe something, It's because you can create something. And so that essence of it, believe. We must believe in ourselves. We must believe in a better America. We must believe in a future devoid of that SOB in the White House. Thank you.
Please. That's a gift for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Please join us outside for a reception. Okay.